The water hit Oluchi's chest like a sledgehammer, knocking the air from her lungs before she even had a chance to scream. There was no time to think, no time to weigh the pros and cons, and certainly no time to check if anyone else was going to help. The old man's head had bobbed under the murky, debris-filled surface of the drainage canal for the third time. The brown torrent, swollen by Soul's flash flood, roared like a living beast, tearing at the concrete banks. Grab my hand. Oluchi choked out, spitting filthy water as the current slammed her shoulder into a submerged piece of rebar. Pain exploded in her left leg, sharp, hot, and sickening, but she didn't stop kicking. She couldn't. The old man was 10 feet away, his eyes wide with the terror of a dying soul, his fingers clawing uselessly at the slick moss of the canal wall. The city above them was a blur of gray rain and indifference. Cars honked. People stood under umbrellas on the bridge, filming with their phones, unwilling to ruin their shoes. But Oluchi was already in the abyss. She lunged forward, her fingers brushing the old man's soaked suit jacket. He was heavy, dead weight dragging them both toward the intake grate, where the water swirled into a dark, crushing funnel. "I've got you!" she screamed over the roar of the rain. She hooked her arm around his chest, locking her grip. The current fought back. It wanted them both. It twisted Oluchi's injured leg, forcing a guttural cry from her throat. Her vision spotted with black dots. The cold was seizing her muscles, turning her limbs to lead. Not like this, she thought, grit and panic mixing in her blood. Asterisk. I didn't survive this long to die in a ditch. Asterisk. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she kicked off the opposite wall, propelling them toward a rusted ladder rung jutting out of the concrete. She grabbed it. The metal bit into her palm, slicing skin, but she held on. "Help us!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. Finally, the spectators moved. 2 men scrambled down the embankment, extending a pole. They grabbed the old man first, hauling him up the slippery slope like a sack of wet flour. Oluchi tried to follow, but as the adrenaline faded, the agony in her leg took over. She looked down. The water around her thigh wasn't brown anymore. It was streaked with bright, arterial red. "Miss! Grab the pole!" someone shouted. She reached out, her fingers trembling violently. As they pulled her onto the mud, the world tilted on its axis. The gray sky spun into darkness. The last thing she heard was the frantic wailing of sirens and a man's voice, not the old man, but someone observing from the shadows, speaking into a phone with terrifying urgency. The smell of antiseptic was the first thing to return. Oluchi blinked, her eyelids feeling like sandpaper. She wasn't in a general ward. She knew what general wards in Seoul looked like. Cramped, noisy, smelling of boiled cabbage and sickness. This room was silent. The ceilings were high, the lighting soft and recessed. A humidifier hummed in the corner. Puffing scented mist into the air. She tried to sit up, but a heavy cast on her left leg anchored her to the bed. "You're awake." The voice came from the window. It was deep baritone and devoid of any warmth. Oluchi turned her head. A man stood there, silhouetted against the night skyline of Gangnam. He was tall, dressed in a black 3-piece suit that cost more than her entire life's earnings. As he stepped into the light, Oluchi's breath hitched. He was handsome, devastatingly so, but it was a sharp, predatory kind of beauty. High cheekbones, eyes like obsidian, and a jawline that looked carved from granite. He didn't look like a doctor. He looked like an executioner. "Who are you?" Oluchi whispered, her throat dry. "Where's the old man?" "My father is alive," the man said, walking closer to the bed. He moved with the silent grace of a jungle cat. "Because of you." I'm glad," she stammered, intimidated by his intensity. "I should go. I can't afford this room. I don't have insurance that covers." "Money is irrelevant," he interrupted. He stopped at the foot of her bed, his hands clasped behind his back. "I am Kang Tae-moo, director of the Jimryong Group." Oluchi froze. Even as a foreigner living in Korea, she knew the name. Jimryong, Gold Dragon. On paper, they were a construction and logistics conglomerate. In the whispers of the back alleys where Oluchi worked her part-time jobs, They were the syndicate, the Mafia. You saved the chairman, Temu continued, his face unreadable. The doctors say your leg was severed by rebar. They reattached the artery, but the nerve damage is severe. You may limp for the rest of your life. Oluchi looked down at the cast, a cold pit forming in her stomach. A limp? She worked 3 jobs. She needed her legs. Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of this terrifying man. I did what anyone would do, she said, her voice shaking slightly. If he's okay, then that's enough. Please, just let me go home. Temu stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. He seemed to be dissecting her, searching for a lie. You are a foreigner, Nigerian, according to your ID. Visa status, student. Financial status, poor. He recited the facts coldly. You jumped into a flood to save a man you didn't know. Why? Does there have to be a reason to save a life? She shot back, a flash of anger cutting through her fear. Temu's eyes narrowed. He pulled a chair over and sat down, leaning forward. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. There is always a reason, he said softly. And because of your action, a very complicated situation has arisen. What situation? My father has enemies, many of them. For years, they have waited for him to die. Today, nature almost did their job for them, but you interfered. Oluchi pulled the sheets higher, her heart hammering against her ribs. I don't understand. You should be happy. I am grateful, Temu said, though the words sounded foreign on his tongue. But my father's enemies were watching. They saw a woman pull the chairman from the jaws of death. They saw his face. They saw your face. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a glossy photograph. He slid it across the bedside table. It was a grainy picture taken from the bridge. It showed Oluchi dragging the chairman out of the water. Her face was clear, visible. This is already circulating in the underworld, Temu said. They think you are his bodyguard, or his secret daughter, or a new associate. I'm nobody. Oluchi cried out. I'm just a student. To them, you are a loose end, a target. Temu stood up, buttoning his jacket. If you walk out of this hospital, you will be dead within the hour. Oluchi stared at him, horror dawning on her. So what are you saying? Temu walked to the door and locked it with a definitive click. He turned back to her, his expression grim. I am saying that your life as you knew it is over. You aren't a patient here anymore, Miss Oluchi. You are my prisoner. For your own safety, you do not leave this room, you do not call anyone, and you do not disobey me. He placed a hand on the door handle. Welcome to the family. Open this door. Oluchi screamed, pounding her fist against the heavy oak wood. It was useless. The door was solid, likely reinforced, and the lock was electronic. She slumped back against the pillows, exhaustion washing over her. It had been 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days of nurses who wouldn't make eye contact, bringing her gourmet meals she didn't have the appetite to eat. 3 days of staring at the Seoul skyline from a window that didn't open. She was trapped in a VVIP suite on the top floor of the hospital owned by the Jimryeong Group. It was a gilded cage, luxurious and cold. She looked at her leg. The pain was a dull throb now, managed by the foredrip, but the fear was sharp. Dead within an hour. Was Temu telling the truth? Or was this some twisted way of controlling her? The electronic lock beeped. Oluchi stiffened, pulling the blanket up as a shield. Temu entered. He looked different today, disheveled. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and faint, jagged scars. He looked like a man who had been at war. He carried a tablet and a small velvet box. You've been refusing to eat, he noted, glancing at the untouched tray of abalone porridge. I'm not hungry for prison food, Oluchi snapped. Temu stopped at the end of the bed. For the first time, a flicker of amusement crossed his stoic face. You have a sharp tongue. Most people lose their voice when I walk into a room. I jumped into a flood, she retorted. You think a suit scares me? It should. His amusement vanished instantly. I just spent the last 12 hours cleaning up the mess caused by your heroism. 2 men tried to enter the lobby downstairs with silencers. They were looking for room 1204. Your room. Oluchi's blood ran cold. The defiance drained out of her. They really came? They did. Temu placed the tablet on the table. And they have been dealt with, but it confirms what I told you. You are marked. He sat in the chair, exhaling a long, weary breath. He rubbed his temples. For a second, the mask of the ruthless Mafia boss slipped, revealing a tired son carrying the weight of an empire. Why are you here? Oluchi asked, her voice softer. My father wants to see you, Temu said, but he is too weak to move yet. He insisted I bring you this. He pushed the velvet box toward her. Oluchi hesitated, then opened it. Inside lay a bracelet made of pure jade and gold, intricate and heavy. It looked ancient. It belonged to my mother, Temu said quietly. She died when I was young. It is a family heirloom. My father believes you were sent by her spirit to save him. Oluchi stared at the jewelry. It was beautiful, worth more than her entire education, but it felt like a shackle. I can't accept this, she said, closing the box. Temu looked surprised. Do you know what that is worth? I don't care. I saved him because he was drowning. If I take this, it becomes a transaction. It makes it cheap. Temu studied her again, that intense, dissecting gaze returning. You are a strange woman. You have nothing, yet you refuse everything. I have my dignity, she said. Dignity doesn't stop bullets, he countered harshly. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. The humidifier stopped humming. The electronic lock on the door let out a dying whine and disengaged. Temu was on his feet instantly. He drew a sleek, black handgun from the holster at his back, a movement so fast Oluchi barely saw it. Get down, he ordered, his voice low and lethal. What's happening? Power cut. Someone hacked the grid. He moved to the side of the door, pressing his back against the wall. They're here. Oluchi scrambled off the bed, ignoring the screaming pain in her leg, and hid behind a heavy armchair as Temu had commanded. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The door creaked open. A shadow moved in the hallway, a figure dressed in hospital scrubs, but wearing heavy combat boots, stepped into the room. Bang! The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Temu fired once. The intruder crumpled to the floor, clutching his leg. Stay down! Temu roared at Oluchi. Two more men rushed the doorway. Temu didn't hesitate. He engaged them in hand-to-hand combat, the gun forgotten. It was a blur of violence, bone-snapping, brutal efficiency. Temu moved like water, fluid and devastating. Within seconds, the three men were unconscious or groaning on the floor. But one of them, the first one who had fallen, raised a pistol with a shaking hand. He aimed not at Temu, but at the armchair, at Oluchi. No! Temu screamed. He threw himself across the room. Bang! The bullet shattered a vase next to Oluchi's head, showering her in glass and water. Temu landed on top of her, shielding her body with his own. He groaned, a sharp, guttural sound. Silence returned to the room, broken only by the heavy breathing of the men. Are you hit? Temu asked, his face inches from hers. His eyes were wide, frantic. I don't think so. Oluchi gasped, trembling uncontrollably. Temu pushed himself up. His left shoulder was bleeding, staining his white shirt crimson. The bullet had grazed him. He looked down at her, his expression shifting. The coldness was gone. In its place was something else. Anger, yes, but also a fierce, terrifying protectiveness. Pack your things, he growled, grabbing her arm to help her up. Where are we going? The hospital is compromised, he said, holstering his weapon and wincing. We are going to the main estate. If they want a war, I will give them one. But you are staying by my side where I can see you. He looked at her, blood dripping from his sleeve onto the floor. You saved my father. Now, I'm going to save you. Even if I have to burn this whole city down to do it. #### Chapter 3. The Kneeling Dragon. The Jumryong estate was a fortress disguised as a traditional Hanok mansion, nestled high in the mountains surrounding Seoul. High walls, electrified fences, and men with earpieces patrolling the perimeter. It had been 2 weeks since the attack at the hospital. Oluchi sat in the private garden, the autumn wind biting at her cheeks. She gripped the parallel bars of the rehabilitation equipment that had been installed specifically for her. Again, the therapist said gently. Oluchi gritted her teeth. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She took a step. Her left leg trembled, weak and unresponsive. The nerve damage was healing, but slowly. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. "I can't," she whispered, collapsing onto the wheelchair behind her. "You can," a voice said from the veranda. Temu walked down the stone steps. His shoulder was bandaged under his shirt, but he moved with his usual dominating presence. He dismissed the therapist with a nod. "You are pushing me too hard," Oluchi said, wiping her face with a towel. She was tired of this place, tired of the luxury that felt like a prison, tired of the debt she felt she owed him for saving her life at the hospital. "If you don't push, the muscle will atrophy," Temu said, standing over her. "Do you want to run again? Do you want to dance? Then stand up." "Why do you care?" she snapped, looking up at him. "I'm just a loose and you're protecting until the heat dies down." Temu's jaw tightened. He reached out and grabbed her hand. His grip was warm, firm. "Stand up, Oluchi." "I said I can't." "Stand up," he roared, his voice echoing off the garden walls. Startled, angry, and fueled by adrenaline, Oluchi grabbed the bars and hauled herself up. She glared at him, tears of frustration in her eyes. She took one step, then another, then a third, her legs shaking violently. She stumbled. Temu caught her. He didn't put her back in the chair. He pulled her against his chest, holding her weight. She could feel his heart beating, steady, strong. "You are not a loose end," he murmured into her hair. The harshness was gone from his voice. "You are the only person in this world who acted without a hidden agenda. In my world, that makes you rare. It makes you precious." Oluchi looked up. Their faces were inches apart. For the first time, she didn't see the Mafia boss. She saw the man. The loneliness in his eyes was vast. "Temu!" He pulled back, clearing his throat, stepping away as if he had been burned. "My father is awake. He wants to see us in the main hall." They walked, Oluchi in her wheelchair, Temu pushing her, to the grand reception room. Chairman Kong sat in a wheelchair zone, looking frail but commanding. When he saw Oluchi, his face crumpled. "My child," the old man rasped. "Come here." Oluchi wheeled herself closer. The chairman took her hands, his grip weak. "They told me what you did. They told me about the canal, about the hospital." He looked at his son. "And Temu tells me you refused the payment." "I didn't do it for money, Chairman," she said softly. "I know," the chairman nodded. "That is why you deserve this." He nodded to Temu. Temu stepped forward. He held a leather folder. He placed it on Oluchi's lap. "What is this?" "Open it," Temu said. She opened the folder. It was a deed, a transfer of ownership for a massive building in downtown Seoul, and a charter for a charitable foundation. "The Sunny Foundation," Temu explained, "named after my mother. It was her dream to help orphans and students who had no one. She died before she could finish it. The building has been empty for 20 years. It is yours now." Oluchi gasped. I can't run a foundation. I'm a student. This is millions of dollars." "You have the heart for it," the chairman said. "Money we have plenty of. Hearts like yours? We have none." Then Temu did something that made the maids in the corner gasp. The feared dragon of Seoul, the man who broke fingers without blinking, slowly lowered himself to one knee beside Oluchi's wheelchair. He looked up at her, his eyes stripping away all pretenses. "My family owes you everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I owe you more. You saved my father, yes. But these past weeks, watching you fight to walk, watching you defy me, you have woken me up." He placed a hand over hers on the armrest. "Please accept this, not as payment, but as a promise that I will use my power to protect what you build. You bring the light, Oluchi. I will keep the darkness away." Oluchi felt a tear roll down her cheek. She looked at the deed, then at Taemu. For the first time in her life, she felt a power that wasn't about physical strength. It was a power of connection. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." Taemu smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his face. But the moment was shattered by the ring of a phone. Taemu stood up, pulling a burner phone from his pocket. His smile vanished. His eyes turned to ice. "Speak," he answered. He listened for 10 seconds. His knuckles turned white. He looked at Oluchi, a look of pure devastation. "If you touch her," Taemu whispered into the phone, his voice trembling with rage, "I will peel the skin from your bones." He hung up. The room was silent. "What is it?" the chairman asked. "It's a Viper clan," Taemu said, his voice hollow. "They know she is here. They have surrounded the mountain. They want to trade." "What trade?" Oluchi asked, fear gripping her again. Taemu looked at her, his soul breaking in his eyes. "Me," he said. "They want me to surrender, or they burn this house to the ground with everyone inside." Rain. It was raining again. The storm battered the windows of the hammock. A cruel echo of the day Oluchi's life had changed. "No," Oluchi said, grabbing Taemu's arm. "You can't go out there. They'll kill you." Taemu checked the magazine of his pistol. He was wearing a tactical vest now, looking every bit the soldier. "If I don't go, they breach the walls," he said calmly. "My men can hold them off for maybe 20 minutes. The police are bought. No one is coming. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Taemu cupped her face. His thumbs brushed away her tears. "The Viper leader, Chang-ho, wants the chairman's seat. But he fears me. If I give him myself, he will let the rest of you go. That is the deal." "You trust the word of a snake?" The chairman barked from his chair. "He will kill you and then kill us." "I have a plan," Taemu said, though he didn't look confident. He looked at Oluchi one last time. "When I walk out that gate, you take the car in the underground garage. Drive. Don't look back." He kissed her forehead, a brief, burning touch, and turned to the door. "Taemu!" she screamed. He walked out into the rain. Oluchi watched from a window. The courtyard was floodlit. Beyond the gates, headlights cut through the darkness. Dozens of men. Taemu walked to the center of the courtyard, his hands raised. The gates opened. A man in a white trench coat stepped in, Chang-ho. He laughed, a cruel, grating sound. "The dragon kneels!" Chang-ho shouted. "Check him for weapons." 2 thugs patted Taemu down, taking his gun. They kicked him to his knees in the mud. Chang-ho pressed a gun to Taemu's forehead. Oluchi's heart stopped. She looked around the room. The chairman was helpless. The guards were outnumbered. One decision, she thought. Asterisk, one decision changes everything. She remembered the canal, the fear, the leap. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a killer. But she was the owner of the Sunny Foundation. And she remembered something Taemu had told her about the estate security system. The floodlights. They are high voltage. But the junction box is exposed in the garden. She looked at her leg. It throbbed. "I can do this," she whispered. She grabbed a heavy bronze statue from the shelf. She didn't go to the garage. She went to the side door. She stepped into the storm. The cold rain hit her, waking up every nerve. She limped, dragging her bad leg through the mud, staying in the shadows of the eaves. In the courtyard, Chang-ho was monologuing, savoring his victory. Taemu was staring at the ground, waiting for the bullet. Oluchi reached the garden. The junction box was there. It was locked, but the hinges were rusted. She raised the bronze statue. Smash! The lock broke. She ripped the panel open. Wires hummed with lethal electricity. She looked at the courtyard. Chang-ho cocked the hammer of his gun. "Goodbye, Director Kong." "Hey!" Oluchi screamed. Chang-ho froze. Taemu's head snapped up. Oluchi stood in the rain, soaking wet, holding the bundle of exposed wires. "Let him go," she yelled. "The crippled girl?" Chang-ho laughed. "You think you can stop me?" "I don't need to stop you," Oluchi yelled. "I just need to blind you." She jammed the bronze statue into the live wires. Boom! A massive spark exploded. The transformer blew. Every light in the estate, The floodlights, the gate lights, the perimeter lights shattered and died instantly. Pitch blackness. The men shouted in confusion. I can't see. My eyes. In the darkness, the sound of movement. Fast. Brutal. Temu didn't need light. He knew every inch of his home. And he knew darkness better than anyone. Gunshots flashed in the dark, illuminating brief, horrific snapshots. Temu disarming a guard. Temu striking Changho. Temu moving like a demon. Oluchi sank to the ground, her work done. Minutes later, silence. Then, the backup generator kicked in, bathing the courtyard in a dim, red emergency light. The Viper clan lay scattered on the ground. Changho was unconscious, zip-tied to the gate, and Temu was standing in the middle of the rain, breathing hard. He looked around wildly until he saw her huddled by the garden wall. He ran to her. He fell to his knees, sliding in the mud, and pulled her into his arms. You crazy, foolish woman, he yelled, his voice cracking. You could have electrocuted yourself. I told you. Oluchi smiled weakly, touching his wet face. I don't leave people to drown. Temu buried his face in her neck, shaking. The ruthless was gone. He was just a man who had almost lost the only light he had ever found. 6 months later, the ribbon cutting was crowded. Cameras flashed. Journalists shouted questions. Oluchi stood at the podium. She wasn't wearing a hospital gown. She was wearing a tailored cream suit. She stood tall. There was a cane in her hand, a sleek, black stick with a gold handle, but she leaned on it only slightly. Her limp was faint, a battle scar she wore with pride. The Sunny Foundation, she spoke into the microphone, her voice steady, is open to everyone, no matter where you come from, no matter how deep the water is that you are drowning in. We are here to pull you out. Applause erupted. At the back of the crowd, a black car waited. The window rolled down. Temu watched her. He didn't approach. He couldn't be seen with her publicly. Not yet. The underworld was still dangerous, and he had to keep the darkness away from her light. But on her wrist, glinting in the sun, was a jade bracelet. She looked up, scanning the crowd. Her eyes found the black car. She smiled. A small, private smile just for him. Temu smiled back, though she couldn't see it. Driver, he said softly. Take me to the office. Yes, Chairman. He leaned back as the car pulled away. He touched his chest, where his heart beat steadily. He thought about that day in the rain. The day he almost lost his father. The day he found her. And here is the real question. If you were standing in that rain, watching the water rise, watching the danger swirl, would you have jumped or would you have watched? Because sometimes one decision in the storm doesn't just save a life. It creates a legend.